Have you ever wondered what it feels like to lose everything you thought mattered, only to rebuild a life so extraordinary that the people who once walked away suddenly want to come back? Imagine spending years being told you would never amount to anything. Then, one quiet afternoon, landing your own helicopter, while the person who left you insists that somehow it belongs to them too. That is exactly what happened to me. And the truth behind it is far more unbelievable than anyone expected. 8 years before I ever owned a helicopter, or saw my name on lists of the world's wealthiest entrepreneurs, I was sitting in a lawyer's office signing the papers that officially ended my marriage. Looking back now, that moment wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no screaming arguments or emotional speeches, just quiet signatures, a few formal conversations, and two people walking away from a life they had once promised to build together. My ex-wife believed we had reached the point where there was nothing left to save. She wanted stability, predictable income, and a future she could clearly see. I, on the other hand, was completely focused on a business idea that had consumed my thoughts for years. At that time, my company was barely surviving. There were no wealthy investors waiting to support me, no expensive office, and certainly no signs that it would ever become successful. Most people who looked at my situation saw only risk and failure. My ex-wife wasn't cruel about it, but she honestly believed I was chasing an impossible dream. She had watched me spend countless nights working on plans, attending meetings that led nowhere, and investing every spare dollar into a company that seemed to produce nothing except stress. Eventually, she decided she couldn't continue living with so much uncertainty. During the divorce, we divided everything we actually owned, which wasn't much. There were no luxury homes, no expensive cars, and no hidden fortune waiting to be discovered. Every financial record was transparent, and every asset was shared according to the law. When the paperwork was complete, we each left with our own separate lives. She moved on, believing she had escaped years of disappointment, while I walked away carrying little more than my laptop, a stack of business notes, and an idea that almost everyone had already given up on. Friends quietly suggested I should abandon the company and find a secure job. Some relatives even told me the divorce should be a wake-up call to stop taking risks. Instead of discouraging me, those opinions made me even more determined to prove that persistence could accomplish what doubt never could. Every morning I reminded myself that the end of my marriage didn't have to become the end of my ambition. Every rejection, every sleepless night, and every difficult decision became another reason to keep pushing forward, even when there was no evidence that success was anywhere close. The first few years after the divorce tested me in ways I never imagined. Every morning started with a long list of problems that seemed impossible to solve. My company was still small, my savings were disappearing, and every important meeting felt like another chance to hear someone explain why my business would never succeed. Investors listened politely, nodded at my presentation, and then turned me down with the same familiar phrases. They said the market was too competitive, the risks were too high, and my vision was far too ambitious. There were moments when I walked out of conference rooms wondering if everyone else could see something I couldn't. Even so, I refused to let disappointment become my permanent mindset. Instead of focusing on rejection, I studied every criticism, improved my ideas, and returned with stronger plans. I reduced unnecessary expenses, worked longer hours, and personally handled responsibilities that normally required an entire team. Some nights I stayed in the office until sunrise, reviewing financial reports, testing new products, and preparing for meetings that might never happen. The pressure was constant, but every challenge forced me to become a better entrepreneur. Slowly, the effort began producing results. A small client agreed to take a chance on our software, and the success of that project opened the door to another opportunity. Positive recommendations spread through the industry, attracting larger customers who had previously ignored us. As revenue increased, I hired talented people who believed in the company's mission as strongly as I did. Together, we refined our products, expanded into new markets, and built a reputation for solving problems that larger competitors had overlooked. Major investment firms that once rejected my proposals suddenly wanted to discuss partnerships. International companies started signing long-term contracts, and our growth accelerated faster than anyone expected. News outlets began covering our success, describing it as an overnight achievement, even though they had never seen the years of sacrifice, uncertainty, and relentless work that made it possible. The value of the company climbed into the billions, transforming me from someone people doubted into someone business leaders wanted to meet. Wealth brought financial freedom, but it also reminded me that success rarely arrives all at once. It grows quietly through thousands of ordinary decisions, difficult conversations, painful failures, and the determination to continue working when nobody else believes the outcome will ever change. By the 8th year after the divorce, my life looked completely different from the one I had struggled through in those early days. The company had grown beyond anything I had imagined, and for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about survival. I was thinking about the dreams I had postponed while building my business. One dream had stayed with me since childhood. Whenever I heard the sound of helicopter blades cutting through the sky, I would stop and watch until the aircraft disappeared into the distance. There was something inspiring about the way a helicopter could rise straight into the air, move freely in almost any direction, and reach places that seemed impossible from the ground. As a boy, I often told myself that if I ever achieved real success, I would own one someday. For years, that dream remained nothing more than a distant fantasy, because every dollar I earned went back into my company. Once the business became financially secure, I finally decided the time had come to reward myself for everything I had endured. I didn't rush the decision or buy the first aircraft I saw. Instead, I spent months researching different helicopter models, speaking with experienced pilots, visiting aviation companies, and learning about maintenance, safety requirements, and ownership responsibilities. I wanted to make a thoughtful decision rather than an emotional one. After careful consideration, I selected a helicopter that combined reliability, advanced technology, and elegant design. The day it was delivered to the private airfield felt almost unreal. Standing beside it, I remembered the countless nights when I had wondered whether I would ever escape financial uncertainty. Now I was looking at something that represented years of patience, discipline, and persistence rather than simple luxury. My family joined me for the occasion, along with several employees who had stood by me during the company's most difficult years. We took photographs, shared stories about our journey, and celebrated how far we had come together. Everyone understood that the helicopter was not just another expensive purchase. It symbolized the impossible becoming possible through determination and consistent effort. One of my colleagues posted a few pictures from the celebration on social media, and within hours they began spreading across the internet, attracting attention from business contacts, former classmates, distant relatives, and even people I hadn't spoken to since before the divorce. The attention surrounding the helicopter grew much faster than I expected. Friends congratulated me, business partners sent thoughtful messages, and even people I barely remembered from my past suddenly wanted to reconnect. At first, I assumed it was simply because the photographs had become popular online. Then one afternoon, I received a message from a name I hadn't seen on my phone in years, my ex-wife. For a few moments, I simply stared at the screen, wondering what she could possibly want after so much time had passed. I thought perhaps she was reaching out to congratulate me or to catch up on how life had changed for both of us. Instead, her message was short and direct. She wanted to meet because she believed we needed to discuss the helicopter and the fortune that had made it possible. Curious more than concerned, I agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe the following weekend. When she arrived, we exchanged polite greetings, but it didn't take long before she explained the real reason she had asked to see me. She claimed that although we had divorced years earlier, the success I enjoyed today had roots in the years we spent together as husband and wife. According to her, the sacrifices made during our marriage and the emotional support she once provided had contributed to the person I eventually became. Because of that, she believed she deserved a share of my wealth, including the helicopter that had become a symbol of my success. I listened carefully without interrupting her, allowing her to explain every point she wanted to make. When she finished speaking, I calmly reminded her that our divorce had been completed long before my company became profitable. At the time we separated, the business had almost no value, and every asset we owned had already been divided fairly through the legal process. The billions I earned came years later after endless setbacks, financial risks, sleepless nights, and difficult decisions that I faced alone. She responded by saying that not everything important could be measured by legal documents or financial records. She believed that because our shared history helped shape my character, part of everything I achieved afterward should still be connected to her, and she insisted that fairness should recognize that connection rather than focusing only on the official divorce agreement. I remained calm as I listened to everything she had to say, because I knew emotions would only make the situation more complicated. After she finished, I quietly explained that I understood why she might look back with regret, but the reality of my success had been built entirely after our lives had gone in different directions. When our marriage ended, the company was struggling to survive. There were no hidden fortunes, valuable shares, or profitable investments waiting to grow. Every document signed during the divorce accurately reflected what existed at that time. The years that followed were filled with challenges she never witnessed. She wasn't there for the endless business trips, the rejected proposals, the sleepless nights, or the difficult financial decisions that nearly forced me to close the company more than once. Every breakthrough came from risks I accepted alone, and every setback became a lesson that helped me move forward. For a brief moment, she lowered her eyes and admitted that seeing my achievements had made her question the decision she made years ago. She confessed that watching my life change so dramatically filled her with thoughts about what might have happened if she had stayed and believed in my vision a little longer. There was sadness in her voice, but I didn't feel satisfaction or revenge. Time had changed both of us, and I realized that carrying old resentment would only take away from the peace I had worked so hard to build. We ended the conversation respectfully, and I genuinely wished her the best in whatever future she chose. A few weeks later, I received notice that she had consulted lawyers about making a claim against my fortune. My legal team immediately reviewed every record from the divorce, every company filing, and every financial document created over the past 8 years. The evidence was clear, complete, and impossible to dispute. The business had become valuable long after the marriage had legally ended, leaving no foundation for any ownership claim. Once her attorneys reviewed the facts, the matter quietly came to an end without reaching a courtroom. Life returned to normal, and I focused my attention on expanding my company, supporting my employees, and enjoying the freedom I had earned through years of persistence. Whenever I looked at my helicopter sitting on the runway, I no longer saw an expensive machine or a symbol of wealth. I saw every difficult choice, every sacrifice, every lesson learned through failure, and every step that transformed an uncertain dream into a remarkable reality.